I was going to use a different filter to record today's Fantasy Fiction Friday, but I think I'm going to stick with this one. I had to check my teeth. Sorry. Because look at those lips, you guys. Yeah, yeah, no, I don't look like that in real life. Odd V. Sorry, I missed last Friday. It was my birthday, and I had things to do, like go to the DMV. So I'm coming back with you wearing my birthday wig. You like it? I like it. Anyway. So I know I said I was going to read Salem's Tale this week for you guys, but she gets. I mean, I know I've already gotten pretty dark on this channel and with these stories, but I just don't feel like she's really internet safe. So I'm going to skip that tale. If you want to read Salem's Tale, it's definitely available on Amazon as well as on KU. The name of the novel is The Ladies of the Lily, Dystopian Tales of the Fae by Genevieve Gravel. So you can check it out there. So I'm going to move on to the next story in our anthology of short stories. Let's get into it. And here's the thing about Salem's Tale that we're not reading is she's pretty essential in the anthology, and it does come up a lot later in other stories, and it definitely kind of shows a lot of the world building and where they've gone. Sorry, I'm obsessed with this wig. I can't stop playing with it. So that's kind of a bummer that you guys are gonna miss out. But yeah, I gotta keep it, you know. I mean, I know my channel's 18 and over, but I gotta respect some boundaries, and then I have boundaries. So we're gonna get into it. This story is the fourth story in our anthology. There's 20 altogether. This is, or 19 altogether. The last one is a two-parter. So this one's called Rain the Great. This is Josephine's Tale. In the Great, Josephine's Tale. I stood on shaky legs, trying in vain not to drop the bundle of firewood. Not because I was lacking in strength. I was much stronger than most of the girls that worked gathering. It was a huge bundle of fallen branch shards and twigs, brittle, dead splinters of wood refusing to be claimed, not wanting to be captured or carried away. I too felt the same. Moreover, I did not want to face the consequences of not bringing in the day's quota. My feet ached with each excruciating step. The scraps and cuts from the previous day work had burst open and blood marked my path. The cool breeze provided me with a sweet respite from the midday sun glaring down and crisping my skin to a deep shade of red. My long yellow braid fell forward, slapping me in the face. Maybe I should be wearing a blonde wig for this since she's blonde. What do you think? Let's try it. Hold on. I don't know. I'm kind of feeling the brunette more. Anyway. I dropped my glasses. Can't see through these things. I need to fix this one so she fits a little better. But that's not what we're here for. We are here for a story. So let's go on. The cool breeze provided me with a sweet respite from the midday sun glaring down and crisping my skin to a deep shade of red. My long yellow braid fell forward, slapping me in the face as I bent to pick up what had fallen. I couldn't wait for this day to come to an end. I was hungry, beyond hungry, ravenous. They never fed us nearly enough to replenish the energy we spent making sure they were warm and fed. Now I could taste the savory sensation of hot bread and meat on my tongue. I couldn't shake the visions in my head of soaking my feet in a pot of water and aloe warmed over a soothing warm fire. The desire for it provided me with motivation to get the day's work done quickly. Bathing was one of the few luxuries we were allowed. only if we could afford it. We had little rewards, but at times our needs were met. Rewards for our work, compensations, they called it, scraps of food, fresh water, and all that. Things we could easily provide for ourselves if all our time and energy were not used for their needs. Those all dressed and pretty on the upper branches they called the court, those close to the king. We were but peasants living in forced poverty. Hurry up, girl. The guard's voice pierced through my thoughts, as if I wasn't going fast, as if I I could for my own personal reasons. Why would I hurry for him? The audacity of the guards who stood around watching. What did they know of hard work? Going as fast as I can. Why don't you give it a try? It's not as easy as you may think, I retorted. I could never keep my mouth shut. I knew I should have put my head down and did as he said, but I really was working beyond my means. It's just never enough with them. You again, the guard snapped. The only part of him visible under all that metal was his long green beard, a muddied red streaked through it, matching the massive expanse of the wings that ran a deep crimson at their tips. You must enjoy the beating I give you, he snarled, his teeth showing from behind his helmet, yellowed and rotting. Is that it? He questioned, stepping toward me. I stopped dead in my tracks. My eyes darted around for a place to run or a weapon to protect myself. All I had was flimsy shards of fallen branch. What was I going to do? Scrape him? There was nothing that could penetrate all that gear he darned. That I knew. But there was no way he was going to touch me. Not again. Never again. You like it when I wrap my hands around your throat? He asked. No need to misbehave. I'll gladly choke you, hit you, hold you tightly to me. I will rip you open with all my girth. All you have to do is beg. His girth, I laughed to myself. You really are delusional. Oh, I saw no different in any of the guards. They were all the same. If I beg you to look the other way, will you let me leave? Would you? I said. Never. You belong to the king. It is the way it has always been and always will be. But that doesn't mean you can't have what you want from me, he said, rubbing his... The fuck did he think of me? He was disgusting. Was he so daft that he thought I wanted to be... Who could ever want that? Or more want him? I hated him. I hated the king. I hated it here. We all did. All the fae of the lower branches. All those that the crown kept oppressed, under guard, forced to work for their wants, their wishes, their desires, under their threat of torture or death. I was only 23, but I had heard of the fae of the River of Life. While none of whom lived, as the story went, I would still leave here with a moment's notice and go there and face the wrath of the giant. If only I could get others to leave with me. And we were outnumbered and under constant watch, but it was possible. I had kept a watch of my own. And I knew when we had time to be alone in the dead of night, only the entrance was watched. The windows had no shutters. Not one on the lower branches, anyhow. We could widen them and carve them open enough for us to fit. There's always an opportunity. That ignorant man, a man of means, he knew nothing. I knew the truth. We all knew the truth. Stories often told as children's fairy tales whispered in the night. The truth that was not told nor taught to men like him. That we were once free, and the king, whom he loved so dearly and served so loyally, was a tyrant, born to a tyrant, capable of destroying an entire community. He was capable of destroying me, at least my body. But I vowed long ago that they would never break me. I would not succumb to their wishes and murderous whims. I would one day break free or burn this whole place down dry. And my mother long ago taught me those fairy tales. She told me many truths, no matter how much they hurt. The story of Fleur's Fury was one of our bedtime stories. Fuck the whole damn lot of them. She talked of men on the higher branches openly and honestly, with resentment in her voice and anger in her eyes. She pointed them out from a distance and afar. She pointed out my father. He had refused her and me because though he may have at one time loved her, he had refused to marry her. His friends and family thought of her as nothing more than a blight on the community and all. He would not give up his place in society for one of our kind. It was a common story amongst my friends. I had tried to talk to my friends, but some agreed but none had the will or the strength to fight, much less run away with me. We were more often than not forced to watch those whom we loved, our own families, be beaten, at times to death. Even still, I could not find a way to bite my tongue when the guards addressed me. Fuck you, I screamed. The guard grabbed me. I dropped the bundle of wood to the ground for a second time, the twigs scattering all around my aching, bleeding feet. With a short walk back, my thoughts returned to how I would make my great escape. It didn't have to be at night. But given the Fae's eyesight, it would be safer. We could hardly see in the dark. It was why everyone was lit with the light of 100, if not thousands, of candles. Despite fire safety, we didn't live in a dream. A few of my neighbors were forced to face the bee for those candles. There was no taming the bee. And we were not natural enemies, being only the slightest bit larger than them. But they showed no fear and they would not hesitate to protect their queen and hive. Much like our guard to their queen. Theirs, not mine. She would never be mine. I denounced the crown. The entire damn lot of them a long time ago. I was sure a few lives were lost collecting wax for us to burn consistently. What choice did my neighbors have? The possibility of being stung by the bee or watching their wives get beaten by the Fae. It worked, I must admit. The fear and intimidation. It was all manual wrangling of the bees to steal their honey for wax until they learned how to use the rhododendron to make the honeybee go mad. It would fly around in circles, vomiting. But it was also a danger to us. We suffered as the bee if we consumed it, even if it had sat on our skin for too long. It was a dangerous job indeed. Bee wrangling? At least all I had to do was collect debris from falling branches. No, Josephine. Don't take comfort. Just because it's worse for others does not diminish my experience in this life. My next door neighbors, whom I had shared many meals with, had told me how they made the poison nectar for the bees. We were more than neighbors, really. We'd become friends. The parents and their son, Roden, the bee handlers who worked with the candle makers, they had the nectar of the rhododendron. And I realized The realization took my breath away. I don't know what had taken me so long to think of it. My way out had been in front of me my entire life. The sunset cast a pink glow with streaks of white and golden rays that peeked through the few clouds in the sky. Songs of birds danced from a distance and filled me with a greater sense of hope. It was the night of the full moon that came once every fourth season, a night that would forever change my life. I eagerly wrapped my feet and went to them with offerings of a loaf of bread. For this, I would gladly not eat. Leaning against the wall, I knocked lightly on the door. The loaf of fresh bread in hand, Roden answered and invited me in. I found him alone. His parents had not yet returned. I was glad to cast my eyes upon his lovely face, a face of freedom with his full pink cheeks covered in the beginning stages of a pale green beard. Lovely, I thought. I could have kissed him. Crates of jars sat on his floor near the door. He caught me peeking at them. I had a hard time pretending to not stare at them. Trying to look out the window and seem nonchalant as we ate together at the small wooden table that had been in desperate need of a polish. And an awkward silence fell between us. I was sure he was fatigued, but he didn't seem to mind my presence. Listen. I have a plan to break free, I began. He lifted his index finger to his thin lips, encouraging me to whisper. They're not outside your door, I said as loudly as I pulled my legs up, and I explained my plan, lowering my voice, unable to meet his gaze, picking at my toenails out of anxiety. Josephine, you have to stop with these daydreams. You've become obsessed. You're going to get yourself in trouble with anyone you can get to listen to these schemes. He tried to reason with me to no avail. He had known me well enough to know that his words would fall on deaf ears. Come with me? I asked. I don't want to. It's not so bad here. I like my work. I have my family. I'll soon wed. Please treat her with respect. I exhaled. It's different for you. You're a man. You have choices. And you're actually treated with something that resembles respect. I have no choice. I cannot choose my job or my husband. I have no choice over what happens to my body. My eyes searched for him with any empathy. I'm a woman in the realm of the great oak. We have no choice. I have no choice. What do? We do what we are told, or suffer from our fathers, from our husbands, from the guards, or the crown. I have no choice. All I need is one jar. Just one jar of nectar, please. I begged. Where will you go? He asked. The river of life is where my kin came from. Or maybe the dark mountain where your kin came from. I'll go anywhere that's away from here, I said. My heart pounded in my chest. He had to say yes. He just had to. We are from here. My parents, yours, our grandparents, and great-grandparents were all born right here in this tree, he argued. The tale of old say, I debated back. They're fairy tales, he pleaded with me. And then after a long pause, he added, what if you fail? What if I succeed? No, Roden pointed to the jars, stacked in the splintered crates next to the door. But I understood what he was saying. With his eyes, his motions, though he opposed his words. So with his back turned, as he wiped the plates clean, I took one jar. One was all I would need. Be careful. Don't let it sit on your skin for any period of time. It's faster to ingest. I'm told it's sweet and it tastes good. I wouldn't know because I'm not dumb like you. I'm also told in low doses it can cause erections that can last a day. So please make sure you use enough or you will suffer one way or another, he said. Thank you. I will miss you, I said softly. I don't know what you're talking about. I'll see you tomorrow, he replied with a smile. And I kissed him on the cheek and bounced my way down the corridor to my room. I had hoped it would be the guard from that morning. But what were the chances of that happening? He had already completed a full shift. He would be easy, though. I already knew how to deal with him. Having done it so many times before. It didn't matter who was going to be guarding the entrance. They were all the same. I told myself, hyping myself up, preparing myself to follow through with the plan no matter what. After all, they didn't even have names. At least not to me. They were all called Sir. Shock and glee reverberated through me. It was him. I could smell him before I could see him. Yes, this was a good sign. This was my time. He was alone. The night guard always was. Plus, how he worked in the morning, he would be tired and off his game, making this plan so much easier for me. A large horn sat on the ground next to him. He could sound it to call for help. I had to move it away from him. Or him away from it. This was going to be fun. A smile crossed my face. My heart rate increased. Ignoring any sense of agitation or trepidation that would stop me, nothing could stop me. I had no desire to die that night. I knew I would if my plan went awry. But it wasn't. It would not let it. I was going to be free of this place one way or another. As I approached the door, I shoved my gloved hand into my pocket. The jar was still there. Take a deep breath. You can do this. Asshole, I said, walking by. He ordered me to come there. Nope. He was going to follow me. I knew it. He wasn't going to let that slight pass him by, drawing him away from the door and the horn. Oh, as easy as pie. I walked past him out the front door with a "what are you gonna do about it" stare. Then I ran, not too fast, but just far enough to pull away from where he stood, into the dark of night and out of sight, looking over my shoulder to make sure he could catch me. I could still see the light emanating from the grand hall and the tree's entrance. He was following me and gaining on me. Perfect. Not much further, and we would be shrouded by darkness. I took a few more steps and then slowed my pace. He landed on top of me as my stomach hit the hard ground, taking my breath away. It was time. I called him every insult I could think of. I degraded him for not being able to stay that morning. The release the release of his body weight on top. What? He landed on top of me. My stomach hit the hard ground, taking my breath away. It was time. I called him every insult I could think of. I degraded him. I spit in his eye. He raised his face just enough for me to shove my hand up his chin, forcing the nectar into his mouth and in his nose. He sneezed some, and it landed on my face. I began to panic. I had to get it off of me. He gagged and vomited next to me, forcing him to roll off of me, offering me the chance to run. I got to my feet with haste and wiped my face with the hem of my skirt and ran. I looked back and saw him trying to stand up, but he kept falling, unable to get past his knees. More vomit came from deep within him. I removed my gloves, throwing them on the ground behind me, and I ran. Not looking back that time, I ran into the darkness. I didn't know where I was or where I was going. The only thing I knew, the only thing I could see, was the starlight above me. I was free. I did it. A sprinkle of rain slapped my face. I wiped it away. I wasn't going to let it slow me down. I had to get as far away as I could. Once the guard was found, the king would be calling for my head. The winds began to blow, and my hair flew out behind me as I ran against the force. Then the rains began to flow. I couldn't see anything. The storm had come in quickly, but still I ran, and the ground shook, knocking me over. I found myself struggling to stand and maintain balance. My eyes searched wildly in the moonlight for a place to hide. I was in an open field. The tall blades of grass whipping around me with fury, and panic set in as I realized I had no place to hide from the storm. And a lightning bolt, followed by a thunderous boom, blinded me with light and left my ears ringing. The closest place I had to take refuge from the storm was back in the tree. I had to turn back, and I didn't know what to do. I was dead either way. The sky illuminated with an ominous red glow, and I kept running forward, wishing I could fly. If I was going to drown, I was going to drown if I could not find higher ground. I gasped for air, covering my face with my hands to keep the rainwater out and letting the precious oxygen in. Spinning, a whirlwind of sound, screaming that came from the land below. I could hardly think. The sky lit up in a natural blue on one side of me and red on the other, and images of bulls shooting green lights of energy toward the town of Alexandria confounded me. Had the poison sunk into my skin? Was I hallucinating? The unnatural glow was the only source of light guiding my way back. And it was the only place I could go. I had to head back. I fought this storm each step, taking all my strength. I had nearly reached the tree when I passed the guard lying on the ground. The poison I had administered to him had caused paralysis. The rain was nearly going to cover his face. He would surely drown. I stopped short. If I drug him indoors, he would live. But I would not. They would surely hang me in the town square for my crimes. If I left him there, he would surely die. Could I kill him? He was not any man, though. He was my tormentor. The reason I had felt the overwhelming need to run. Still, I had not intended for him to die. That was never a part of the plan. Then again, neither was the storm. Where did it come from? It had come so quickly. Everything about it felt unnatural. And what were those phantom bulls with the strikes of lightning. I wasn't sure of what I'd seen. Could it have been a figment of my imagination? No, no. I was certain my eyes had not fooled me. What do I do? A booming sound shook through my body. I looked at him and took a few steps towards the entrance. Debris flew like bombs from the dark mountain into the field that I'd just been running across. A sudden burst of flames hit the ground to be quickly doused by the rain, so I just ran inside, leaving my victim behind to his demise. I struggled to shut my shutters because I had shutters, and I hate it when I recognize these things because clearly I just said they didn't have them on the lower branches, but she has shutters? The fuck? Ugh. Okay, well, that's what happens when you can't afford an editor. Okay, so I struggled to shut my shutters tight, finding the dying winds that kept pulling them from my grip. The rains had fizzled into a light sprinkle. The smell of smoke and fire filled the air, making it hard to breathe. The lack of moonlight concerned me. The moon should have been there, shining from behind the ashen sky that created the hazy layer as far as the eye could see. The dark mountain had erupted. The dark mountain had erupted. Once I locked my shutters closed, I fell to my bed, covering my ears with my hands and my mouth with the layers of blankets. This was bad. This was really bad. Screams of torture and pain rose from the city of Alexandria, replacing my fear for my own life with the fear for all of Mother Nature. I could hear my neighbors come from their homes, congregating and finding comfort and reliving their trauma in the halls, so I joined them. Roden had a look of surprise when I stood next to him. Without a word, he took me into his arms. He was shaking. I listened as the others spoke. None had talked of the bulls in the sky, streaking down on Alexandria, but I couldn't ask anyone if they too had witnessed what I had. I was worried that if I mentioned it, I would have to explain where I had been and why. There was no mention of the guard who surely died. I suppose no one had the chance to investigate outside the Great Oak. He had not been found yet. It was only a matter of time. I had to keep that to myself too. It was the only chance for my survival. The tree had fallen into a minor state of repair. Shutters and sconces needed to be replaced, and a few cracks needed to be filled. But somehow all the branches had remained in place. Everything else had changed. This world was broken, but our home remained intact. I struggled to make sense of it. The sun seemed to shine on only us. The sky behind the giant's castle darkened with ash. In the event horizon, a clear line was drawn between destruction and life, where we resided under a protective dome, where the sun shone and the air was clean. They declared it must be that we were chosen. We were Mother Nature's favorites. But we hadn't been chosen. We were resigned. We resided within a realm of magic. That very magic had been proven to be a dark evil. The magic of the giants. The magic of the witches of Alexandria. And we were only under their protection because of their proximity to us. I cannot tell anyone of my beliefs on this situation because they had all stopped listening to me long ago, as if they had ever begun. So I kept it to myself. Yeah, I became very lonely. Surrounded by my kin, my kind, the working and gathering had changed to cleaning up the debris that had flown in with the storm. Not that that was any easier. In talking with Roden, he told me the home of the bee lay beyond the realm of protection, and with no way to reach them. He really feared for what was to come. The air choked with every breath once we left the light of the sun. We had no idea if the bees even remained alive. How are we going to survive without the pollination? He'd been out there. He'd seen the destruction firsthand and everything that had been decimated in the eruption. When our reserves run out, we will all surely starve, I replied. I still had heard nothing of the bulls. I was sure I had seen them. They haunted my dreams, and I would awake, drenched in sweat, screaming. But still, I heard nothing of the bulls. What the fuck? Okay, I'm glad I'm reading off of a manuscript, an older manuscript, because I really hope I didn't publish that. It's the same line literally twice. How did I miss that in like 5 rounds of editing? What the fuck? Don't buy my book. Just listen to me read it. It's better. So sticking with the theme of redundancy, I had heard nothing of the bulls. I was sure I had seen them. They haunted my dreams, and I would awake drenched in sweat, screaming. And the rumor had it the storm had been responsible for the guard's death. A few others had perished as well. The Fae of the Willow Glen were completely wiped out. It was just us now, the Fae of the Great Oak. It was a travesty, leaving nothing but trauma in its wake. And we've been cursed. It was trauma that I didn't know how to deal with. I'd always thought that getting away from this place would free me from the trauma of life under the protection of the crown. But trauma was all I found. I had not even gotten past the field and came back with more trauma. If it weren't for the fucking storm and the eruption, where would have I had ended up? It was best to not think of such things. I wiped the thoughts from my mind and focused on what was in my control, which was nothing. The crown continued to spread the propaganda of we, the chosen ones, and said that we should celebrate life. In a way, the king was right. We should. I should celebrate life. but I could not. Could they not see what I saw? All the plants had begun to die off. The giants would replace them with others that were foreign to us, plants we had never seen. The hybrid foliage was poisonous to us, and we would soon find ourselves in a state of famine if we weren't more careful, if we did not recognize that we were not immortal. The Fae of the upper branches, the elite, those closest to the crown, had not known what they could eat and would blame us for feeding them food that made them ill. To me, it wasn't hard to see that all the insects would avoid some plants. Should we not also? Obviously, we couldn't ingest those. The king and the court needed to be clear on which of these new plants we could not have. The king and the court needed to be clear on which of the new plants we could and could not have. So they took elderly women and forced them to eat those plants. Our elderly women, who had been no better use to society, or so they said, to justify the torture and murder of our grandmothers, our mothers, our aunts. It was the only way to find out, they said. By order of the king, we sacrificed a few to save the many. The few that would face this fate were, of course, of only from the lower branches. We were dispensable. I watched, more like I tried to look away. Even if I had managed to turn my gaze, I would never unsee all I had witnessed. If this had been a dystopian landscape before, it had become something far beyond that. Something I had no words for. Listening to, in a state of disbelief, and learning of some poor woman who had broken out in hives, the blisters that burned her delicate skin, and the pain that was relentless, and not by their own choice. The women had been chosen. And we protested, we begged, we pled for our lives. With the guards, they wouldn't hear of it. They pulled the women from their homes in the arms of their frantic and pleading loved ones to take them to the medical tent and makeshift labs where they would be injected and forced to eat random plants. The king would put and post flyers and posters calling the women heroes and praising them for their contributions and sacrifices. They were given honor, though most of them did not survive long enough to see it. Most of the surviving family members were paid, given accolades, resources, parties. They too were honored. It's funny, in the most heartbreaking of ways. I thought honored. Not even my neighbor, who knew so much of my truth that night. He didn't know. I had not achieved my goal. I had achieved my goal. I had escaped. I was there. I was there that night. And I was there in the morning. The storm, it brought with it so much chaos. No one had the time to think of me, much in the same way I didn't have any time to think of him. Us of the lower branches, we were forced, under guard as always, to scavenge and gather what foods could be found on the protected ground, and the giants came and began to build around us. They had completed what they called an aviary within a matter of weeks. Walls surrounded us, locking us in behind glass doors and a ceiling above us. And then the rains came with certainty, consistently. The weather was being controlled by more dark magic. Rows of crops were planted by the giants. Wheat, berries, lemons, apples, peaches. There was more than enough resources to sustain us all for all eternity. The giants had even brought in boxes of bees to pollinate. Now, they called it an aviary for the raven and the gilded cage that sat to the west of the enclosure. It was a greenhouse full of life, built to support life. And it all served to strengthen the ideologies that the Faes resolve in the belief that we were the chosen under Mother Nature's protection. And with that, they credited the king, King Bernard, the Savior. The Savior. As if the ignorant brat could save us all when he couldn't even dress himself without help. We had all become prisoners, not just me. We were never going to be free. And I was never going to be able to leave. Except then, neither could anyone else. Our once vibrant colors began to fade under the filtered light of the glass ceiling without reservation or discernment. It began to rain every day at the same time, and the temperature became and stayed moderate, comfortable even. And with that, we began to measure time by the regularity of the artificial rains, no longer by the seasons. One rain to the next was called a day. 5 days to a week. 5 weeks was called a month. And 10 months was considered a year. The equivalent of 4 seasons. A time we could all remember, but would not experience again. Everything had changed, but nothing had changed. We had been gifted with more than enough, and still only the few had more than enough, while the rest of us lived to serve them. I stood on shaky legs, each step excruciating. Some things never changed. A pebble entered my toe. Ouch! I grabbed my toe, jumping from the sudden burst of pain, and the bundle of wood landed on the ground beneath my feet. A guard approached, hurrying to pick up the fallen branches. Fuck, please don't talk to me. He bent down and helped me collect the fallen wood. It took me a moment to gather myself. I'm sorry, I told him. Make sure it doesn't happen again. He placed the twigs he had picked up into my arms. They scratched my skin, and they poked my side, and I walked away to return to my day's work in exchange for a day's ration. Back aching, I ran my hands down my sides, trying to massage the ache away. I thought honor came from protecting and helping the elderly. I thought there was honor in staying alive. Maybe I was wrong in my ideologies. Everyone around me thought that this was the way it had to be. Yet I found it very hard to accept. It was all disgusting, disturbing, heartbreaking. Hear ye, hear ye. I heard the cry beckoning for all the Fae to join in the town square. But I stayed in my room. No one would even know I had not attended. Why would I want to? Anything that came from the king was filled with lies and deception. I mean, I should have gone to hear the announcement. It was nothing but the best of news, the best of news. The king had passed. About time. He'd been alive for nearly 400 seasons and ruled for more than half of them. Perhaps this would be the catalyst for change. But I was stupid to entertain such thoughts, right? But still, I held on to hope. But the funeral, it couldn't possibly be held within the tradition of the Fae, as we had no way of reaching the River of Life. I was far out of the realm of the witch's protection. The funeral procession was led by Prince Bernard, who was not a young man himself. He led the procession to the edge of the sunlight and buried the corpse in the dirt. While our traditions changed that day, the grandeur and the ceremony of it all remained the same. To my surprise, I had not often thought of the man I had killed. I didn't mourn his loss or feel for his family, and I never spoke of it. It never did bother me. He was gone. I was not. But then so much had happened so quickly. So much change. There was hardly time or energy to think of things past. What was important in the moment was all I had the mental space for. Back aching, I ran my hands down my sides, trying to massage the ache away. Pushing hard into my skin, releasing the tightened muscles down my legs. I bent over to wrap my feet, loneliness surrounding me. Ronan and his wife had just welcomed in to this strange new world their first child. I had recently turned down a marriage invitation. Alone in my bed in the dead of night, I found myself giving that a second thought. Work would come soon enough, no need to think of such things that would never be. I laid back on my hard, lumpy bed, pulling my tattered and torn blanket over my body, finding comfort in the tears that flowed from my eyes as they fluttered close, leaving my fantasies behind. They had broken me. I hope you enjoyed Josephine's tale. Now, if you have listened to me or read The Nature of Forces, Harbingers of Despair, you know what just happened. You understand that storm. But these Fae, they don't know what happened or why, right? So that's just a fun little Easter egg. It's definitely also a very huge turning point in their timeline. I really, really enjoy this story a lot. I'm really, really upset that I repeated that sentence. Like, that pisses me off a lot, and I really hope that didn't make it into the final manuscript. Like I said, I don't have a proof copy, author proof copy, in my hand, so I'm just reading from an old manuscript that isn't even like the finalized version. So hopefully it didn't. If it did, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Thanks for joining me. Please come back next week where we will read Bernard the Savior, Lily's Tale. Lily being the title character. Okay. Remember, you are valid. You are worthy. You are loved. Look how dark this, or maybe it's just my makeup. Because the filter would change the color of my hands, right? Like, my makeup's really dark. Okay, anyway. Sorry. You're valid, you're worthy. You're loved. Bye!